There's a growing tension around IGN how they're handling Game of the Year 2024 poll. Many fans are raising questions, speculating whether IGN might be manipulating votes. Back in November of 2023, IGN published a highly controversial article about Game Science, the developer of Black Myth Wukong. The piece accused the company of fostering toxic, sexist workplace. Those accusations were based on mistranslated quotes and incomplete text, leading to immediate backlash from fans, even some industry insiders. People quickly called out IGN for pushing a false narrative, and instead of taking responsibility, IGN doubled down. Rebecca Valentine, the author of the article, even went as far as demanding the developers defend her accusation. This whole ordeal, it reminds me of how Asian creators and businesses were unfairly targeted during the early days of the pandemic in 2020s. Back then, we saw a wave of racism and unjustified criticisms thrown towards anything connected to Asia. And now, seeing a Chinese developed game like Black Myth Wukong being treated like this by one of the biggest gaming outlets in the West feels all too familiar. It's hard to wonder, does IGN want to position themselves as the gatekeeper of the gaming industry, particularly when it comes to non-Western games? Now, let's fast forward to the Game of the Year 2024 poll. Black Myth Wukong was leading the poll with a huge margin. At one point, reports indicated that the game held nearly 90% of the vote, but suddenly it drops to 4th place behind Final Fantasy VII, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, Helldivers 2. This abrupt shift raised serious concerns among fans, leading many to speculate that IGN might be manipulating vote to prevent Black Myth Wukong from taking the top spot. Here's where things gets even more interesting. This isn't just about fluctuating community vote. Fans on platforms like Reddit, Twitter have pointed out how the timing of this drop feels suspicious. It's as if IGN's unresolved bias from last year's article has carried over into this voting process. If IGN already mishandled their reports on this game, could they also be manipulating the poll to prevent the game from getting the recognition it deserves? And let's not forget, IGN has a massive influence on the gaming industry. I can't help but feel like they're trying to act as a gatekeeper, deciding which games succeed and which don't. Could this be their way of silently sabotaging a game that they already had a controversial history with? Now, what makes this even more suspicious are the conflicting reports about the poll results. Some sources, like TechNode, are claiming that Black Myth Wukong is still leading the poll with nearly 90% of the vote. Meanwhile, other sources, including those following the IGN official ranking, shows the game is sitting at the 4th place. This inconsistency is fueling speculation that something fishy is going on the scenes. And let's not ignore the fact that IGN has a well-documented history with Black Myth Wukong. After the fallout of their controversial article, their credibility in covering this game has been seriously called into question. With accusations of misreporting and bias already on the table, there's no surprise that fans are finding it hard to trust IGN's integrity when it comes to this poll. The big question is how much of this is deliberate and how much of it is a result of IGN trying to salvage their image. This whole situation feels uncomfortably familiar to what we saw back in 2020. Back then, there was a clear bias against Asian creators, and now Black Myth Wukong, one of the most highly anticipated Chinese games, is potentially being unfairly treated again. Whether it's intentional or not, this bias is hard to ignore. At this point, we have more questions than answers. The sudden drop in Black Myth Wukong's ranking, the conflicting report, and IGN's past controversies with this game have left fans suspicious of what's really going on. Could IGN be manipulating the vote? Are they still holding on to the bias from last year's article? Or is this a case of community voting fluctuation? And more importantly, is IGN trying to position themselves as a gatekeeper of the gaming industry, deciding which game gets recognition and which don't? I'd love to hear from your thoughts. Do you think IGN is manipulating the Game of the Year poll? Or is this just how these things go? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into gaming news and controversies like this.